Hello, everybody, and good morning. I'm Mark Pascal, and this is Francis Schott. That's how we start every radio show, for those of you. I'm Mark Pascal, and this is Francis Schott. Together, we own Stage Left and Catherine Lombardi restaurants in New Brunswick, New Jersey. As well, we do a little radio show, as Calvin was telling you about food and wine and sustainability. But who are Mark and Francis? At the core of our being, Mark and Francis are bartenders. That's how we started in this business. That's how we self-visualize ourselves. That's what we see ourselves as, even today, even as we're running multiple restaurants and giving lectures from here and there and doing all the other things that we do. We still see ourselves as bartenders. What does that mean? Well, it means that 9:30 in the morning is not a great time for us to speak. Okay, that's the first thing that it means. Okay. But when you think of a great bartender, what do you think about? Think about, well, I'm gonna be able to ask that guy if the play next door is any good or not. I'm gonna be able to ask that guy what time the trains run. I'm gonna be able to talk to that guy about what's good on the menu, what's not good on the menu. I'm gonna be able to talk to that guy about who won the game last night, and more importantly, I'm gonna be able to talk to that guy about who's gonna win the game tonight. But when we look at all those things, we look at the bartender, one of his most important jobs, the things that he needs to be skilled at more than almost anything else, is the bartender needs to be a great storyteller.
And telling stories is central to what we do in all of our professions. We have a couple of restaurants. We decided if we were going to be in the restaurant business, which we both love, that we were going to own our own restaurant. And so we run a couple of restaurants. We have a radio show. We do a lot of consulting, and we're doing more and more public speaking and education. And the thing that is common throughout all of this is telling the story, right? We make a great cocktail. We produce things, but we also tell people the story. Calvin mentioned transparency, and people really want to know the story. And the story in the 25 years that we've been in the restaurant business has changed, and it's changed dramatically. I'm reminded of a story that when I worked for someone else at 21 years old, it was my first bartending job. I worked with a guy named Kevin Bresnahan, who went on to have some success as an actor. He was in a movie recently. He was in a number of movies over the last several years. What a surprise, a waiter who's an actor, right? And there was a rather officious gentleman at the bar who was asking a lot of questions about whiskey, about Irish whiskey and Scotch whiskey. And I am Irish, so I was born in my DNA. There's a knowledge of whiskey, so I just talked.
But an ability to talk about.
And an ability, and the gift of the gab, as they say, right? So, but as the conversation went on, I realized that this gentleman was asking questions and not really listening to the answers. He was just trying to impress the rather attractive woman that he was with. And so he was, sort of just asking these questions. Gentleman from Princeton, New Jersey, which, is a very, is a place that we all wish we were from in New Jersey. We have a thing in New Jersey we call Princeton envy, as a matter of fact, so the gentleman goes and sits down at the table after having these many long question and answer sessions with me about whiskey, and Kevin comes up and says, "Hello, my name is Kevin, and I'll be your waiter tonight." And the special this evening, we start with a white bean soup, and the gentleman says, as he had done with the whiskey, "Now, Kevin, tell me exactly, what is exactly a white bean?" And Kevin said, "Well, it's you see, it's white, and it's a bean, and the appetizer." Yeah, and what's amusing about that to me is that story, and I thought, 25 years later, I'm still telling that story because I thought, he didn't say anything, right? And the fact of the matter is that Kevin didn't know what kind of white bean it was. Kevin didn't know that there were many kinds of white beans. I didn't know what kind of white bean it was, and the chef of one of the top-rated restaurants in Jersey probably didn't know what kind of a white bean it was. And that was 25 years ago. This is a list of the number of tomatoes, of the different varieties of tomato we served in our restaurant over the last 2 years. There are 28 different varieties of tomato. These tomatoes were not blended together in a sauce or served to you in the generic plate of heirloom tomatoes. These tomatoes were brought in at different times from different local farms, one at a time. And what's surprising is people care. Our customers, our guests, really care.
My favorite, by the way, is the Mr. Stripey, because he commands respect.
You got to call him Mr., right? That's the guy. we have all these different kinds of tomatoes, and we would send emails out. We send weekly emails out to about 7,000 people, and we say, the Mr. Stripey is in, and this is how we're handling it this weekend. Why don't you come in? And people will say, oh, I came in. I love Mr. Stripey's. They're my favorite, right? The most difficult name we have is the Seaman tomato, because if you're reciting the specials very quickly, it was very unappetizing. So,
waiter, what kind of tomato is this? Never mind.
It's just a tomato. That one's just a tomato. You don't really want to know. Now, I waited all year to tell the Seaman story. I've been knew that I'd work that in sooner or later. So. These are the different tomatoes we had, but these are not just esoteric, made-up stories about, oh, this tomato, which is exactly like that tomato, is a little bit different. Its name is Harry, right? Now, that's not the story. Here is a little sample of I picked a few of the different tomatoes. If you looked at this and you had never seen a tomato before, I would say, here are 11 different kinds of fruit, and they have 11 different names. And you wouldn't say, oh, my God, they're all the same fruit, aren't they? The black crim looks quite different than the Mr. Stripey, okay? And this variety is now part of the story and must be part of the story. And not only that, and remember, this is driven by our customers. Mark and I are in business. We're not only in it to make money, but if we don't make money, then
we're not in it anymore.
Right, nothing's sustainable if we're closed, right? So, the story didn't end here, okay? So this started about, the 2000s, the late 90s. But in 2008, we took it a step further. We wanted to share with our guests the history of the tomato. Not just any tomato, but the history of the tomato. And we decided that, it's all about the story. And so we want to present a story that people can eat. We want to tell you the history, and we want you to eat the history. And so you may not realize that the first tomatoes to make it to the Old World were indeed yellow tomatoes. Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomatoes. Pomo meaning apple, oro meaning gold, pomodoro. So we know that the first apples to reach the Old World were yellow apples.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes, sorry, yeah. Right. Johnny Appleseed, other way around, never mind. So we're tomatoes, right. So You may also not be aware that the tomatoes were considered poisonous. They were deadly nightshades, yet they were kept around. In figuring out why they might have been kept around anyway, they were also considered an aphrodisiac, right? And so they had some utility.
So we're all willing to kill ourselves for the right cause.
Right, just all things in moderation. So we served with this little bit of information to our folks. The Indike yellow tomatoes. Indike is a local farm by us, with Jonah crab meat and ginger. The first mention of tomatoes with pasta didn't occur until 1839 with Ippolito di Cavalcante, the Duke of Bonvicino, who wrote about a recipe for vermicelli con la pomodoro. Isn't that crazy? The pasta and tomatoes didn't come together until 1839. Our country was already born. Vermicelli with Ramapo tomatoes, a local tomato to New Jersey that we're very proud of, with garlic and olive oil.
Now realize what we realized in the telling of this story. Certainly, the Duke used a local tomato when he made this dish the first time he made it, when he made it with the vermicelli. So we decided to do that same thing. We didn't use the tomato that the Duke used, we used a local indigenous New Jersey tomato.
I'm Irish, and the Irish tradition of culture was an oral tradition for many, many years until Lady Gregory began to put it down in words and preserve it. And the Shanachie is the Irish storyteller. And what you realize in any oral tradition is that with each telling of the story, it evolves, and it is part of the past. And
evolves, I like that one.
Our vermicelli with local tomatoes is different than the Duke of Bonvicino's, I'm sure, but we're continuing to be a part of the story. The place of the tomato in Italian cuisine, of course, we think of tomatoes in Italian cuisine, but you may not realize that, or we may not think immediately of French cuisine. But, Antonin Carême in the 1800s, when he codified all the mother sauces of French cuisine, came up with the 5 mother sauces. They're bechamel, velouté, espagnole, hollandaise, and you guessed it, tomato. The tomato is indispensable to French cuisine as well. And we use that mother sauce, which we called tomato sauce a la Carême, which is just the basic mother sauce, with Berkshire pork loin and pork belly, and people loved it. And then finally, the most interesting thing we did was the tomato originated in Mexico. And the first Western person to write about the tomato was a missionary to the Aztecs who wrote about pre-Columbian Mexico City prior to 1590, where you could buy a jarred tomato sauce or a prepared tomato sauce in the market of pre-Columbian Mexico City.
So realize in 1590 you were going to the market and you could buy a jarred tomato sauce.
Isn't that crazy? I wonder if they said their slogan was like, "That's Aztec." Sorry. Okay, so we did the flat iron steak sous vide with Aztec sauce and cornbread. And we had to approximate what the Aztec sauce was, but we know from several Western descriptions what the Aztecs used in their tomato sauces, and so we approximated it. This dinner was sold out from the moment we announced it. It sent reservations through the roof for a week. We had to extend it to a second week. Bon Appetit magazine wrote about this nationally. The blogosphere lit up. We got emails from everywhere, and now we do it every other year. It was a tremendous success.
Of course, every other year means we did it then and we did it this year.
Right. It's our second biannual. So make a reservation next October. So the question is, though, who are these people? In 1986, I didn't know what the soup was when I was behind the bar. I had to use a crib sheet to figure out what the soup was. Who are these people that care so much about this story that they actually want to eat it?